President and Chief Operating Officer of Brite Computers. We are a local organization here in upstate New York. We actually are headquartered in Victor, New York. I'll talk a little bit more about our organization in a second. But I'm here to talk to you about visibility and the fact that visibility is a sound building block in any cybersecurity strategy or policy or foundation or however you want to refer to it. So today the underlying theme is going to be visibility, and you will see that kind of carry throughout here. So what is visibility? So visibility can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and so I put up a couple definitions here. The first is for all the old guys and girls in the audience that remember what a Merriam-Webster's dictionary is. If you remember what a dictionary is, can you put up your hand? Richard, I see you. Okay, the second one is for all those millennials and Gen Z folks and whatever it is everybody's called today. That's a Wikipedia definition. I will let you guys go ahead and read those. I don't need to read them off to you, but just wanted to kind of set the baseline for everybody. What's important in today's conversation is our definition of visibility from a security perspective. And from our perspective, it's the ability to see devices on and off the network and data as it sits at rest, in use, in motion, and moving now to and from the cloud. Okay, everybody good with that? One quick question before I move on. Everybody, I'm assuming in this room, is an IT professional? Yes, yes, okay. How many are IT security professionals? Show of hands. Okay. So a fair amount of you. Okay. So a little bit about us, and then I'll move on. We are focused, our mission statement, we're focused on being the exclusive, trusted source for secure, stable, and scalable IT environments for our clientele. Okay, so every day our goal and objective is to make sure that we're sitting down with our clients, understanding their business goals and objectives, and how information security, information technology helps them achieve those goals and objectives. And we want to be the go-to partner in that space. So this is our meaning of exclusive, trusted, secure, stable, scalable. It's kind of a marketing slide. I'll move on. So me. By the way, this is a new picture for me. I had this picture from when I was 28 years old on my LinkedIn profile, and I had every single one of our partners and vendors and customers coming to me saying, you have got to change your LinkedIn profile picture. And so I see a couple of you laughing at me because you know what I'm talking about. You were the people telling me to do that. So I have changed it. My marketing team took this beautiful, nice picture out in front of our office the other day. And yes, I have a lot of gray now. I was kind of rebelling against it a little bit. But I'm a Rochester native. I was born and raised here in Rochester. I'm currently a Pittsford resident. Big fan of upstate New York. I probably could have moved my business anywhere else in the country, and I'm not going to do that. I love upstate New York. I love everything about this community. I love the change of seasons. I'm a big outdoor guy. I love the lakes. I love the snow and the skiing, and I'm just a huge fan of upstate New York. Probably the thing I like the most about upstate New York is just the people, and I really enjoy the people that live here in our community with us. I've owned Brite now for 20 years. It's a long story, I won't go into it, but acquired the company in conjunction with my father, who was a serial entrepreneur. I'm not supposed to say that word serial. Had a lot of therapy over that. But serial entrepreneur, bought, sold, shut down, folded 23 companies since 1979, and I kind of fell into that a little bit. I'm a community-involved individual. I really feel strongly in giving back to the community. Currently, I'm a board member at Rochester Regional Health System, one of the two great hospital systems that we have here in upstate New York. We're blessed with incredible health care and very passionate about the things that we're doing at Rochester Regional Health System. I'm a former professional baseball player, so I still spend a lot of my time in the baseball community. I coach high school baseball at Pittsford Men in High School in the springs, and in the summertime I spend as much time as I can with some of the youth baseball programs and helping to continue the love of the game. I'm certainly a lover of the game. Again, I talked about being an advocate of upstate New York. There's a number of people here that are working very, very hard to make sure that we keep IT jobs here in upstate New York, grow IT jobs in upstate New York, and probably more importantly, make sure that there's not IT brain drain here in upstate New York. We are fighting with the Bostons of the world, the Palo Altos of the world to retain these jobs. We have an incredible amount of talent. Our higher educational systems are fantastic. They're developing great talent, like our man here in the third row. And we want to keep them here because we have great opportunities to grow that IT talent, and they can make big-time contributions to our organization. So, big advocate for that. Been married for 22 years, all of them happily. Won't go any further. My wife's name's Stacy, high school sweetheart. We went our separate ways for a while. Enough about that. We're back together. No. And then father of 3 young men, which I take very seriously. They're 19, 17, and 15, so sophomore in college, senior in high school, and then sophomore in high school. And then when I'm not spending time on Brite or in the community or with my family, I enjoy golfing, fly fishing, and just in general spending time with friends and family, I guess. So to set the stage, I want to talk a little bit about perception versus reality from a security perspective. I have the good fortune of spending a lot of time in our community talking to, and not just our community, but across the country, talking to various constituents and organizations that have some concern or have a stake in the game, the security game. From board members to IT leaders in the C-suite, and then IT leaders down the food chain. And I notice quite often a difference between perception and reality, or a difference in the belief of where they lie in the scale of security maturity. So to keep it very simple, we try and use a security maturity scale of 1 to 5. And so if you look at these conversations that I have often with these different constituents, I'll get a different number across the board. If I'm talking to a board member and I say, hey, what do you think your security maturity is within your organization? They might say, well, it's a 4 out of 5. They actually have no clue, by the way, just so you know. I'm a board member. Well, I might have a little bit more clue than some of the other, but they don't know. Nor should they probably know. It's debatable. Then I'll talk to a CIO or a CISO or some EVP in the IT environment, and I ask them the same question. They say, well, you know, we're a 3.5. Okay, so why? Some of them have gone out and done external assessments that tell them they're a 3 or a 3.5 by a third party. That's great. Some of them are kind of spitballing to themselves. And then I talk to the IT team folks, the guys down in the trenches, the guys and girls down in the trenches, and they're like, yeah, well, we're like a 2.5 maybe best, 2.9. We got a lot of work to do. So the net is there's some disparity between what's perceived and what's real, and the question becomes, why is that? Why is this happening? And put a couple things up here for you. But first and foremost, there's a competition for capital. Whether that's, you know, capital dollars or operating dollars, there's a fight for money. There's only so much money that an organization can spend on information security. So at the end of the day, you look at all the projects and all the different things that people want to do, and decisions have to be made, and often the individual or individuals or groups that are more politically aligned within the organization or have the best salespeople on their team end up getting the capital. And so we see that. Then what happens is organizations across the board, and this is where the board comes in, they have to start weighing risk versus reward. Okay, so in reality, if you're a 2.5 versus a 3 or a 3.5, and we can debate where you can really actually ever get to, but at some point in time, you have to decide, okay, are we going to spend $10 million or $1 million or $100,000 on this IT security project, or are we going to let the dice roll and buy a cyber liability insurance policy to cover us in the event of the breach? So this is a major conversation that's happening on a daily basis, weighing risk versus reward, and every organization has to do that. I think most people understand the cost of a breach these days. The value of an individual record being lost ranges anywhere from $25 to $150, sometimes higher, depending on what that record entails or it contains. So, big issue. There's also disparate systems out there. Most environments, most network environments, most security environments have been built over time. They're not built overnight. So we're dealing with a lot of disparate systems that don't talk very well to each other. And so they require a lot of manual labor, full-time equivalents to provide them care and feeding. And there's not a lot of automation and orchestration associated with them today. And then finally, resource challenges. IT, you guys all know this, IT is being asked to do more with less on a daily basis. Wearing that out, probably you've all heard it maybe many times today, but there's resource challenges. So that's kind of the baseline for today. The reality is right here in your face, right? So I just put up 3 very in-your-face examples. Probably the majority of you have been affected by at least one of these, if not all 3 in some instances, some way, shape, or form. They're very different breaches, but they're all real situations that have occurred for very different reasons. So the Target issue was probably, in my mind, one of the first major breaches that occurred that everybody's like, oh my God! You know, my wife was screaming at me, my credit information's compromised, I shop at Target all the time. I said, stop shopping at Target. But, you know, realistically, HVAC contractor had credentials to do maintenance. Those credentials fall in the hands of a bad actor, or bad actors. Bad actors get access to the information. Boom, breach. Equifax, very basic scenario. Something that's very, very hard to do consistently is patch. Okay, they had some server architecture that was not patched properly. Next thing you know, breach, okay? Out of compliance server architecture. And then Capital One, which is the most recent one, insider threat, right? Somebody, disgruntled employee, takes some information, maybe not even this disgruntled, just greedy, had access to this information, shouldn't have had access to that information, but they did, and next thing you know, they're selling it for millions of dollars. So it only takes one of these situations, and it's not really a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So we focus on this on a daily basis. Breaches, from a scale perspective, happen very low level to a very high level. Not all of them are multi-million-dollar hits like these are, but all of them in some way, shape, or form damage your credibility with your customers, with your employees, and others. And they're typically very costly. So the security organizations that we work with have an incredible responsibility, Their day-to-day tasks and responsibility are on an order of magnitude greater than what I certainly do on a daily basis, and I think they're daunting for the most part. They have a responsibility to make sure that information, in connection with network and IT operational teams, they have a responsibility to make sure that information is available, that it's confidential, and that the integrity of that data as it moves from inside to outside back into inside, is the integrity of it's maintained. So there's a lot in there. I could go on to that for a long, long time, but from a very simple, basic perspective, there's a tremendous amount of responsibility for the IT security team. And it's only more complicated by this landscape. So, question. Everybody in the room, show of hands, how many of you are 100% confident sitting here today that you know exactly the number of devices that are on your network? How many of you with 100% confidence can say, I have 100% confidence that I know all of the devices that are sitting on my network now? Anybody? Okay. Didn't think so. How many of you, this I guess point isn't probably valid anymore because you don't know what the heck's on your network, but anyway, the net is, how many of you, of the devices that you do see on your network, how many of you are 100% confident that they're compliant, meaning that they are up to the standards that you have internally set for those managed devices on your network? Man. All right, so we got one in the room. So this is hard. This is, again, going back to the task, you have on-premise devices, you have software as a service, you have hybrid cloud environments, you have private cloud environments, you have cloud environments, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. I mean, there's a lot going on in these environments. And security and IT in general is being asked to make sure that this data at all times, rest, use, motion, and in the cloud, is secure. It's huge. It's huge. The more and more I think about it, it's like, how does anybody ever want to sign up for this job? It's a no-win job, right? I got Dave back there saying, yes, you're right. So it gets into this concept of why is visibility so important? Why do we focus on visibility as this foundational building block? And it's very simple to us. Very simple. You cannot protect what you cannot see. So if you don't understand what's on your network, managed or unmanaged, your device or somebody else's device, IT, IoT, shadow IT, whatever you want to call it, you can't protect what you cannot see. Okay? So that's the whole premise of this foundational building block. So invisibility isn't just seeing it once and then knowing it's there. It's the continuous visibility that you need. So that's what we're really focused on here. So you think about being proactive. On a daily basis, I want to understand what's coming on and off my network. So this laptop right here comes onto the network. I want to know, is that device managed or unmanaged? Meaning, do I own it or do I not own it in simple terms? And then, is it up to the standards that I've set or we've set as an organization in terms of compliance? And when I talk about compliance, just so we're level setting here, I mean antivirus, malware, application versions, things like Java. Is Java up to date in the most current version? Some organizations are having to manage multiple versions of Java because of their applications and the way in which they function. So there's a lot going on there, but that's a really, really tough task. But there's a real, true need to proactively look at these devices, and then what type of access do they have? When they get on the network, are they getting access to the things they need and not to things that they don't need? Okay, so that's where a lot of these breaches occur. People get on the network with some credentials, and they may be low-level credentials and should only have access to a very low-level amount of information, hopefully nothing sensitive, but all of a sudden they start getting in the door, and then they bust through further. So the other side of the next side or the next phase of visibility is, okay, we've had a breach. Well, how do we know we've had a breach? We'll talk about all these a little bit more in a minute. And then post-breach, what do we do once we've mitigated the breach and we move on? So proactive, again, I talked about it. It's not just devices, it's workloads, it's applications, it's data at rest and use in motion. The applications might be on-prem, they might be customer-facing applications, they might be internal-facing applications. There's a lot that's going on here, and all of that has to be proactively monitored. If you can't see devices on the network, a laptop, a mobile phone, an iPhone, whatever it might be, you can't protect it. Then you get into monitoring, okay? And this is where I guess probably the most care and feeding is required. We have many customers that have invested significantly in monitoring technology that monitors not only devices on the network, but network traffic itself and otherwise. And this type of technology is really FTE intensive. It requires a tremendous amount of care and feeding. And so we most often probably see visibility lacking in this space and how to handle this. I think a lot of organizations more recently have decided, okay, I'm going to start looking at a managed security service provider to help us with this type of scenario here. But the monitoring is a big part. Security incident and event monitoring platforms, SIM platforms, they require a lot of care and feeding. And if you're not tuning them properly, then you're not getting the notifications you need to react in the event of a breach. So once this breach occurs, what type of notifications are we seeing? What type of orchestration might be occurring between these different systems on the network? If I can get my SIM tool to talk to a tool that's going to go out there and isolate that endpoint and put it into a quarantine environment, that would be ideal. It's just not happening all the time today. So something to think about. And then post-breach, visibility's still very, very important, because it's at that point in time, once you've got the fire put out, that you need to determine, okay, what's the impact to our organization? Who do I have to inform? Well, the CIO already knows, the CEO already knows, the board already knows. They're the one that didn't want to spend the money on the information security platforms, but thank God they bought this security policy, or the insurance policy, so we won't go there. But anyway, so you've got forensics tools. Those are visibility tools again. That give you an understanding of, okay, what is the impact of this breach? How high, wide, and deep did it get? And then what are we going to do now to make sure that this never happens again? Really hard to say never, but hopefully it does not happen again. And hope's not a strategy. You guys have heard that a million times, right? Okay. So at Brite, what we like to do is walk people through this kind of journey, a road trip per se. So we want to start this road trip. And we think it's kind of a simplistic way in which to look at this. It's very complicated, certainly IT security. You have SANS, you have COBIT, you have ISO, you have NIST. These are very, very complicated security frameworks. Even some of the largest organizations that we work with locally and nationally have a hard time really absorbing and taking in everything that these frameworks are talking about. So we try and simplify it down. How am I doing on time, man? I'm good? There we go. So we'll get on this journey. Slow. So first step, gain visibility. That's what we're talking about today. If you can see what's on your network, you can then start to protect it. And from there, it allows you to improve your security posture. So if you can't see what's on your network today and you think you're at 2.5, where do you get to if you can see what's on your network? 2.7, 2.8, 3. It all depends on the magnitude of your environment, what you get to. It might not move the needle that much, but we feel it does. You have to be able to see what's on your network, the data that's moving across your network, devices on your network, everything. Then you can start to improve your posture. From there, ideally you would start getting a technology. In an ideal world, you would get a technology or a very few technologies to help you control all of the other technologies that you have in your environment. In orchestration, we could have hours-long conversation about orchestration. But at the end of the day, you have a centralized tool, centralized console that's connected to the other tools, the other investments that you've made. And then if you have orchestration, you can start to get to automation. And automation being, okay, we've got an event, we see an anomaly on our network, we want the tools and the technology to automatically react to it. We don't want to necessarily have to have a human push a button. Ideally, it would happen so fast, the anomaly would be seen, orchestration, automation occurs, and boom, something happens. Move that device that's potentially breached off into a quarantine zone so it can't affect anything else. I talked a little bit before about kind of outsourcing. Once you get some of these things in place and start to make these investments, you can look at, okay, organizationally, again, this is moving up the maturity scale, right? The goal is to be as mature as you could possibly be. I'm not saying anybody in here is ever going to be a 5. I don't even know if JP Morgan and Wells Fargo and all those guys are 5s. I just don't see it. But when you get to a higher level of maturity, you can start to think about, okay, I have vital few resources, FTEs. They're very, very valuable to me. They can do a lot of really valuable strategic things for the organization. So at some point in time, down the security maturity path, you start to think about, okay, does it make the most sense for me to do this internally, or is it tactical enough that I can outsource this this aspect of our security, day-to-day security? And we're seeing that probably most with SIM, Security Incident Event Monitoring, SIM as a service. Seeing quite a bit of that these days. Once you free up some of your vital few resources, then you can allow them to, those people to start inspecting and doing more. And so that's really where organizations start to see the greatest value from some of these investments. The resources now, you don't have to keep adding operational overhead. That operational overhead that you have, you can now redeploy into more strategic aspects of your IT security strategy, or even your network strategy. And then, by doing that, you're really working through a continuous improvement process. Okay? So, that's kind of our path. It's kind of our path. This doesn't happen overnight. This is actually a very, very long road. It's miles and miles. It only looks like it's, I don't know, 6 feet here, but it's a lot longer than that. And we have a lot of organizations that are, already trying to outsource, or already trying to orchestrate, automate, or inspect, but they don't have any visibility. So again, a lot of the times we're circling back and saying, that's great, you've made all these investments. They wonder why they're not getting value out of them. They're getting hammered by the C-suite all the time saying, we just spent $1 million on that tool, that intelligent threat prevention tool, and we're not getting anything out of it. Well, why not? Well, it's because there's just too many tools in this environment, and you never get the chance to optimize them. So by gaining visibility, knowing what you're trying to protect, we feel as an organization that this is the foundational starting point. So different key initiatives that we see out there. Advanced protection strategies. How many people in the room are going through a network application segmentation initiatives ongoing constantly, right? Seeing a ton of that. Obviously, people are doing that, so there's a tremendous amount of efficiency that's created, but one of the security benefits of that is if it's segmented, it's not going anywhere east or west for the most part. Detection and response, data protection, outsourced services. I talked about some of those things before. I want to talk about end user awareness. We talked about the Capital One breach. We see about 70%, and I think these numbers are backed up by Gartner or somebody else, but we see probably 65 to 70% of breaches that occur are non-malicious in nature, meaning that somebody gets an email, quote unquote, from their bank, they click on the attachment, they open it up, and boom, their laptop's bricked, there's some type of malware that's moving across, hopefully just their PC, but sometimes into their network environment. That's considered a breach, by the way. I mean, it's not a Capital One breach, but it's a breach. Happens in law firms, your doctor's office, your dentist's office, all over the place on a daily basis. End user awareness programs are really, really, really important. I'm not here to make sales pitches or anything like that, but there's a number of different tools out there. A tool we use consistently that's pretty cost effective is a tool called KnowBe4. They run ongoing security awareness programs, so some people know it. I think it's fantastic. I have so much fun with it internally. We eat our own dog food, by the way. So my IT guys are always trying to bust my chops. They send me these KnowBe4 campaigns all the time, and I'll look at it, and I'm like, this seems fishy to me. And I'll send it back to them and say, are you busting my chops today? Stop doing that. I don't have time for this. I need to get into that. So anyway, they're always messing with me. Vendor risk is another one. There's third parties that we're all working with. There's regulations, compliance regulations from the federal, state, and down that are requiring organizations to have third-party risk assessments. So go out there, the people that you work with, to assess their security maturity. We just filled one out for a local organization the other day. It was 169 questions, completely automated. And then securing access. People should have access to what they need for their job. They shouldn't have it. This is a very sophisticated space today. Multi-factor authentication, privileged account management. It's growing rapidly. So this is what we see on a day-to-day basis. Didn't dive into anything. And then lastly, as I finish up here, Our approach, as I talked about it before, focuses and starts with visibility, so visibility in the middle with Brite there. And then I talked about SANS, COBIT, NIST, some of the other frameworks. They're very complicated. So what we've tried to do is break those, let's call it 20 critical criteria from a SANS perspective, and break it down into 5 tenets. And within these 5 tenets, we pretty much cover everything from a SANS critical criteria perspective. But those tenets, you can see them up there: detect and protect, secure access, advanced threat prevention, data protection, and then governance compliance. And of course, we focus on that from mobile all the way through the cloud, and we do that by spending a lot of time with architecture teams trying to develop the right solution, implement that solution appropriately, and then help to provide the care and feeding going forward so that they get the greatest return on investment and hopefully the lowest cost of ownership. So with that, that is my presentation. I think I might have a minute or two for a question or two if anybody has it for me. I appreciate you being here. I didn't think there would be anybody here at 3 o'clock, and it's nice to see some smiling faces. So thank you very much for your time. This has been a great event. I want to thank Innovative and the Chamber for having Brite Computers here. It's been great. Thank you.